It all began on a quiet night at the isolated observatory perched high on a lonely mountain. The wind whistled softly through the surrounding trees, carrying the chill of late autumn. Inside the observatory, the dim glow of computer screens and the occasional blinking light of instruments created a calm, almost eerie atmosphere. Most people would imagine this place as peaceful, but for the team working there, every night was full of tension, curiosity, and a quiet sense of anticipation. They were scientists, engineers, and astronomers, people who spent their lives watching the sky for something unusual, something that could not be explained by ordinary physics or the predictable movements of planets and stars. Dr. Elena Morris, the lead scientist of the team, had been at the observatory for more than 10 years. She knew the mountains, the weather, and the sky better than she knew herself. Her colleagues often joked that she could tell the time just by looking at the stars, and she often replied with a small, knowing smile. That night, however, there was a strange feeling in the Iran energy that even Dr. Morris could not explain. She moved quickly between her computer stations, checking the readings, scanning the deep space channels for any anomalies. Something had caught her attention. At first, it appeared to be just noise, random interference in the radio telescope signals, but as she adjusted the equipment and applied filters, she noticed patterns. The pattern was subtle at first. It wasn't a typical transmission like the ones sent from satellites orbiting Earth or natural cosmic phenomena like pulsars or quasars. There was a rhythm, a structure, something that seemed deliberate, intelligent. Dr. Morris's heart raced as she leaned closer to the screen. She called over her colleague, Rajiv, a young astronomer with a sharp mind but little experience in deciphering complex signals. "Look at this," she said quietly, almost afraid to break the silence. "Do you see it? This isn't random." Rajiv peered at the screen, adjusting his glasses nervously. At first, he shook his head. "I don't see anything unusual. It's just static." Dr. Morris pointed to the repeating sequences. "Exactly, that's the point. Static doesn't repeat like this. Someone or something is sending this signal on purpose." The room went quiet for a moment. The hum of computers and the occasional creak of the building were the only sounds. Then Rajiv's eyes widened as he finally understood. "You mean, it's a message?" "Yes," Dr. Morris replied, her voice low but firm. "And I think it's an SOS." The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. So SOS, an international signal for distress, a call for help. It was a term humans had used for centuries, but to hear it coming from deep space made it almost unreal. The team gathered around, their initial skepticism fading into a mixture of fear, wonder, and excitement. They all knew that if this was truly an SOS from another civilization, it would be one of the most significant discoveries in human history. Dr. Morris quickly began analyzing the signal more carefully. It was coming from a star system far beyond the reach of normal communication methods. The intensity in the structure suggested it was not a natural occurrence. It had to be sent intentionally, likely by intelligent beings. She ran the signal through every algorithm and decoding program available, trying to extract any information about the senders or the nature of their distress. Meanwhile, the rest of the team debated what to do next. Some suggested alerting government agencies immediately. Others were concerned about the risks of contacting an unknown civilization. "We don't know who or what we're dealing with," one scientist said nervously. "It could be a trap, or it could be something dangerous." Dr. Morris understood their caution but remained determined. "We can't ignore this," she said firmly. "If someone is in trouble, we have a responsibility to listen, to understand, and to respond if possible. Even if it's dangerous, doing nothing is worse." Hours passed as they worked tirelessly, deciphering parts of the signal. Small pieces of information began to emerge: a map of the star system, symbols that suggested a message of warning. It became clear that the aliens were aware of a threat approaching their planet, something massive and destructive. They were calling for help, and time was running out. The team realized the gravity of the situation. They were ordinary humans, looking at a crisis that spanned light years, and yet their actions might influence events in a galaxy far beyond their understanding. Dr. Morris felt a mix of fear and awe. She had spent her life studying the universe, imagining that humans might one day find other intelligent life. But she had never truly believed it would happen in her lifetime, and now, it had. As the night deepened, the observatory became a hub of activity. Scientists monitored the signal constantly, recording every pulse and frequency. Computers hummed, processing data at incredible speeds. Dr. Morris and her team worked in shifts, too excited and anxious to rest. They debated theories about the origin of the SOS. Was it a plea for rescue from a hostile species, or was it a warning about a natural disaster? Every possibility seemed both fascinating and terrifying. Dr. Morris couldn't help but think about the implications. If this message reached other humans, how would they react? Would governments take it seriously? Would there be fear, panic, or skepticism? And most importantly, could they actually help? These questions weighed heavily on her mind, but she pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. By early morning, the team had managed to decode enough of the signal to understand the urgency. The aliens' distress was real, and the threat was imminent. There was no time for hesitation. Dr. Morris sent detailed reports to international space agencies, hoping that someone, somewhere, could respond. She also documented everything meticulously, knowing that this discovery would change humanity's understanding of the universe forever. Even as they sent the reports, Dr. Morris couldn't shake the feeling that the night's events were only the beginning. The signal was just the first contact, the initial spark that would ignite a chain of events beyond anyone's imagination. Somewhere out there, intelligent beings were waiting, hoping that anyone would answer their desperate call for help. And on Earth, a small team of humans had just taken the first step toward that encounter. As the sun began to rise, casting pale light over the observatory, Dr. Morris looked out at the horizon. The mountains were silent, the wind had calmed, but her mind was racing. She knew the coming days would be filled with uncertainty, challenges, and unimaginable discoveries. And deep down, she felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. Humanity had been given a glimpse of the universe beyond their planet, and it was up to them to rise to the moment. The signal continued to pulse quietly in the background, a haunting reminder that life beyond Earth was real, intelligent, and in need of help. And so, the story began not just of a single SOS but of a connection between worlds, a chain of events that would test courage, intelligence, and the very spirit of humanity. That night, in that small observatory high in the mountains, the universe had spoken, and humanity had finally listened. The moment the SOS signal was detected and partially decoded, the implications reached far beyond the walls of the small mountain observatory. What Dr. Elena Morris and her team had discovered was not just a distant message. It was a plea for help from a civilization facing a threat that could destroy their entire world. But even as the humans scrambled to understand the signal, there was another presence in the universe, watching, listening, and moving with incredible speed and precision. These were the Deathworlders, a name that had spread like a shadow through cosmic lore. To most humans, they were myths or stories of galactic legends, terrifying in reputation and unmatched in power. They were known for their ruthless efficiency in handling any threat, no matter how massive or dangerous. And now, the SOS from the distant aliens had reached them. The Deathworlders' fleet appeared suddenly in the star system where the alien civilization lived. There was no warning, no negotiation, just the arrival of thousands of colossal ships, each bristling with energy weapons and advanced technologies beyond human comprehension. For the aliens who had sent the SOS, the fleet's arrival was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. They had called for help, and now the most feared force in the galaxy was at their doorstep. The aliens had hoped for rescue, but the sheer scale and intensity of the Deathworlders' presence was more than they could have imagined. Back on Earth, the human scientists could only watch in disbelief. The images captured by telescopes and transmitted by the observatory's instruments showed enormous spacecraft, glowing with energy fields and moving with a precision that made human engineering seem primitive. Dr. Morris and her team felt a mixture of fear, amazement, and excitement. They were witnessing a civilization that was beyond anything humans had ever imagined, a force capable of turning the tide in a galactic conflict. The Deathworlders were not slow or hesitant. They were deliberate, fast, and unstoppable, and they had arrived because someone, somewhere, had asked for help. The aliens, meanwhile, attempted to communicate with the Deathworlders, sending frantic signals and messages. But the Deathworlders were not interested in small talk. Their arrival alone communicated their purpose. They had come to deal with the threat, and they would do so in the way that they saw fit. Their reputation preceded them. Many species that had survived encounters with the Deathworlders knew that they were both saviors and destroyers, depending on the situation. They were merciless to aggressors but precise in their actions. That alien civilization could only hope that they were in the former category, that the Deathworlders had come to save them and not judge them. Humans, observing this from across light years, were forced to confront their own limitations. The Deathworlders' ships were unlike anything Earth had ever seen, massive vessels with engines that defied known physics, weapons that could obliterate entire moons, and shields that made conventional attacks useless. But humans realized that if such beings existed, they were not just powerful, they were incomprehensible. Dr. Morris felt both fear and a strange sense of hope. If humanity ever encountered threats on a similar scale, perhaps learning from the Deathworlders would be the only chance for survival. As the Deathworlders engaged the incoming threat, that aliens could barely comprehend the efficiency and speed with which their enemies were neutralized. The attacking forces, previously thought unstoppable, were destroyed or repelled with precision strikes that left little room for error. From Earth, Dr. Morris and her team could see the flashes of energy, the immense explosions, and the movements of fleets across space. It was terrifying, almost surreal, to witness the scale of the battle. Each action of the Deathworlders was calculated, precise, and devastating. Humanity had never seen anything like this. Even as the battle raged, the Deathworlders made no attempt to harm the aliens. They focused solely on the aggressors, targeting only what posed a threat. To the humans watching, it was a lesson in strategic power, overwhelming force combined with disciplined focus. The Deathworlders' methods were terrifyingly effective. They moved swiftly, coordinating their strikes across thousands of kilometers, destroying enemy forces before they could react. The aliens, initially fearful, began to feel a glimmer of hope. They had asked for help, and now they were seeing it delivered. In the most absolute way imaginable, the Death presence also brought a new awareness to humans on Earth. Dr. Maurice realized that humanity was not alone in the universe, and more importantly, that the universe was not a safe or simple place. The stakes were higher than anyone had imagined. Wars could be fought across stars, civilizations could rise and fall in hours, and the fate of countless worlds might hinge on forces humans had barely begun to comprehend. For the first time, humans understood that being aware of the universe's vastness was not enough. They needed to prepare, to learn, and to understand their place in it. Meanwhile, the aliens tried to communicate their gratitude and relief, sending messages that the Deathworlders barely acknowledged. Their methods were not about politeness or diplomacy, they were about results. But for the aliens, this was more than enough. Their world was no longer on the brink of annihilation. The threat that had loomed over them, something they could not have faced on their own, had been confronted and neutralized. They had survived, thanks to beings whose very name inspired fear and respect on Earth. Dr. Morris documented everything, her hands trembling with excitement and anxiety. She knew that humanity had been given a glimpse into the true nature of power in the galaxy. The Deathworlders were not just protectors, they were a benchmark, a standard of strength and efficiency that humans had never seen. And yet, for all their terrifying power, the Deathworlders had acted with precision, targeting only those who were a threat. It was a lesson in control, discipline, and the terrifying beauty of order in the chaos of the universe. As the hours passed, the battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The Deathworlders' fleet remained in orbit, a silent guardian, watching over the alien civilization. The aliens were left in awe and gratitude, still recovering from the realization that they had survived. For humans observing from millions of light-years away, it was a defining moment, a chance to see the universe in a new light, to understand that there were forces far beyond their imagination, and that the cosmos was filled with both danger and wonder. Dr. Morris felt a profound sense of responsibility. Humanity had witnessed something extraordinary, and they had a choice, to remain passive observers or to learn from what they had seen. The Deathworlders' methods were extreme, but they worked. The humans realized that survival in the universe required understanding, intelligence, courage, and the ability to act decisively. It was not enough to look up at the stars and dream. Humans had to prepare, to innovate, and to rise to the challenges that the cosmos would inevitably present in that moment. Watching the distant fleets and the survivors of the SOS, Dr. Morris understood something fundamental. This was only the beginning. The Deathworlders had arrived because someone had called for help, but the universe was full of signals waiting to be heard, of crises waiting to unfold. Humans were only at the threshold of understanding their place in this grand, vast, and dangerous universe. And as the Deathworlders remained in orbit, silent yet powerful, the seeds of a new awareness were planted, one that would change humanity forever. The night ended with the Deathworlders' ships disappearing beyond the horizon, leaving the aliens safe for now. Dr. Morris and her team returned to their workstations, their minds racing with questions and possibilities. They had witnessed history, and they had seen a force that was both terrifying and somewhere deep inside, Dr. Morris knew that humanity had to pay attention, to learn, and to prepare. The universe had sent its message, and it was up to humans to understand it. After the Deathworlders had intervened and neutralized the immediate threat to the alien civilization, the people of Earth found themselves facing an unexpected mixture of relief, amazement, and anxiety. Watching from millions of light-years away, humans could see the devastating power of the Death, a force so advanced that it made humanity's best technology appear insignificant. Dr. Elena Morris and her team at the observatory were among the few who had the privilege of witnessing these events in real time, and their excitement was mixed with a sobering awareness of humanity's limitations. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if intelligent life existed beyond Earth. They had imagined aliens as beings with technology and intelligence far superior to humans, but they had never truly believed it would happen so suddenly, in such a dramatic way. Now, the proof was undeniable. Not only were aliens real, but entire civilizations could exist that faced threats beyond human comprehension, and forces like the Deathworlders moved through the galaxy with speed, power, and precision that were almost godlike. The reality was humbling, and it forced humans to confront a simple but terrifying truth on a cosmic scale. Humanity was fragile, inexperienced, and completely unprepared for interstellar conflict. Governments around the world reacted in their own ways. Some were fascinated, seeing this as a historic opportunity to learn about the universe. Space agencies worked frantically to understand what had happened, trying to analyze the Deathworlders' movements, the alien technology, and the nature of the threat that had been eliminated. Military leaders were more cautious, worried that Earth itself could one day face dangers similar to those encountered by the alien civilization. Rumors of advanced alien forces and interstellar conflicts spread quickly among the public, sparking debates, fear, and wild speculation. News outlets broadcasted images and reports of the observatory's findings, and social media exploded with theories, both rational and fantastical. Within the observatory, Dr. Morris and her team became a central hub of information. They had not only observed the SOS and the Deathworlders' response, but had also begun to piece together important data from the signals and visual recordings. Every pulse, every movement of the alien fleet, and every pattern of the Deathworlders' strikes was analyzed in painstaking detail. They tried to understand not just the technology but the strategy, the reasoning behind the actions, and the methods used to neutralize such an overwhelmingly powerful threat. To Dr. Maurice, the lesson was clear. Humanity could no longer rely on imagination alone. It needed knowledge, preparedness, and intelligence if it ever hoped to survive in the larger universe. As the observations continued, Dr. Morris realized that the humans' perspective on the universe had fundamentally changed. Before this event, humans had assumed that space was vast but largely empty, and that threats beyond Earth were theoretical. Now, it was undeniable that the cosmos was active, dangerous, and filled with forces capable of obliterating entire worlds. Watching the aliens rebuild after the attack, humans could see the vulnerability of civilizations, even ones far more advanced than themselves. It was a sobering and humbling experience, one that forced reflection on Earth's own place in the galaxy. The Deathworlders, though largely absent from direct human contact, had indirectly taught an important lesson. Power and preparation were everything. The alien civilization had survived not because it was stronger or smarter than its attackers, but because an overwhelmingly powerful and disciplined force had intervened at precisely the right moment. Humanity realized that its own defensive space programs, military capabilities, and technological advancements were woefully inadequate by comparison. Earth's satellites, fighter jets, and even nuclear arsenals were negligible in a cosmic battle. The humans were observers in a universe of forces they barely understood, and this realization was both terrifying and motivating. Dr. Maurice worked tirelessly to relay information to global authorities and scientists. She compiled detailed reports of the signal patterns, the alien responses, and the strategies of the Death. Her team used advanced simulations to try to model what had happened, attempting to understand the principles of interstellar conflict, fleet movement, and energy-based weaponry. They were aware that even a small insight could be critical if humanity ever encountered a similar threat. Meanwhile, the aliens themselves began sending more data about their civilization and the nature of the danger they had faced. The exchange of information, even across unimaginable distances, highlighted how knowledge could become the most valuable resource in a universe filled with dangers. Despite the awe-inspiring intervention of the Death, there was also a sense of unease among humans. The sheer efficiency and ruthlessness of these beings reminded observers that even the most powerful force in the universe acted according to its own rules, not human morality or ethics. Dr. Morris understood that while the Deathworlders had saved the aliens, their methods were terrifyingly absolute. In the wrong circumstances, the same power could easily be destructive rather than protective. Humanity's first glimpse of true interstellar power had shown both its potential for salvation and its capacity for devastation. As days passed, humans continued to study the aftermath. Scientists speculated about the technology that allowed the Deathworlders to move across vast distances so quickly, and engineers tried to imagine how humans could ever develop similar capabilities. Military strategists analyzed the efficiency of the Deathworlders' attacks, noting their ability to strike with precision while conserving energy and minimizing collateral damage. Philosophers, ethicists, and thinkers debated the implications of these events, questioning what it meant for human identity and humanity's future in the cosmos. Earth had become aware of forces it had never considered, and the knowledge both terrified and inspired people. The aliens, for their part, began to recover and rebuild. Their cities, though damaged, were intact enough to allow life to continue. Scientists and leaders among the alien civilization expressed gratitude and relief, realizing that without the Death, their species might have been extinct. Dr. Morris and her team felt a profound sense of connection as they observed these interactions. Although separated by unimaginable distances, the act of helping or witnessing help being given created a bridge between worlds. Humans began to see that their universe was not just a place of danger, but also of potential alliances, learning, and growth. In the observatory, the excitement and pressure were intense. Dr. Morris barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities. Could humanity develop the intelligence, the technology, and the courage to defend itself one day? Could they build alliances with other civilizations or even learn from the Deathworlders if they could be reached? Every observation, every decoded fragment of information, and every simulation brought new questions and new opportunities. The reality was daunting, but it also sparked determination. Humanity had survived countless crises on its own planet, and now, faced with the infinite challenges of space, it had a choice: to remain passive and ignorant, or to rise to the challenge and prepare for a future where survival depended on knowledge, courage, and ingenuity. Even as Dr. Maurice documented and analyzed, she noticed the smallest details, patterns in the way the Deathworlders moved, the timing of their strikes, and the resilience of the alien population. Every detail seemed significant. She realized that understanding strategy was as important as understanding technology. The Deathworlders had acted not just with overwhelming power, but with logic, planning, and discipline. Humans, she thought, needed to learn that combination of intelligence, preparation, and action. Power alone would not be enough. Strategy and knowledge were equally vital by the end of this phase. Humanity had begun to awaken to a new reality. For the first time, they had witnessed what true interstellar conflict looked like. They had seen the consequences of unpreparedness, the importance of swift and decisive action, and the potential for cooperation between civilizations. Dr. Morris felt a sense of responsibility heavier than any she had ever experienced. Humanity had seen the universe's complexity and danger firsthand, and it could no longer afford ignorance. The events of this phase marked a turning point. Humans had watched, learned, and absorbed lessons from forces far beyond their comprehension. While they were still observers, they now had a reference point, a model of power, efficiency, and strategy that could guide their future. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and often unforgiving, but it also offered opportunities for learning, growth, and connection. Dr. Morris knew that humanity's journey had only just begun, and that the choices they made next could determine whether they remained passive spectators or became active participants in the unfolding story of the cosmos. As the observatory grew, quiet late at night, Dr. Morris looked up at the stars, thinking of the aliens she had observed, the Deathworlders' fleet, and the infinite possibilities of the universe. She realized that while humans were limited, they were also capable of curiosity, courage, and innovation. The events of these days had forever changed humanity's perspective. They had learned that survival was not guaranteed, but knowledge, intelligence, and cooperation could create a path forward, even in the most dangerous corners of the universe. And somewhere deep inside, Dr. Morris knew that this was only the beginning. The aftermath of the Deathworlders' intervention left humans in a state of awe and self-reflection. For the first time, they had witnessed forces in the universe far beyond their comprehension, and it became clear that survival in the cosmos would not come from luck or hope. It would come from preparation, strategy, and courage. Dr. Alina Morris and her team at the observatory felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had observed the extraordinary capabilities of the Deathworlders, and they realized that humanity could no longer remain passive. If humans ever faced a threat of similar magnitude, they would need to act, and they would need to act together. Inspired by what they had seen, scientists, engineers, and strategists around the world began collaborating like never before. Previously, most space programs had focused on exploration and research, but now there was a sense of urgency. Engineers worked tirelessly to study propulsion systems, energy technologies, and defensive measures, trying to understand how even a fraction of the Deathworlders' power could be adapted for human use. Every experiment, every calculation, and every model was infused with the knowledge that the universe was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Meanwhile, military organizations worldwide faced a difficult realization. Their conventional arsenals, missiles, fighter jets, and naval fleets were useless against threats on a galactic scale. The lessons of the Deathworlders were clear. Precision, strategy, and overwhelming efficiency were far more important than sheer numbers. Human commanders studied the recorded data, analyzing how the Deathworlders moved their fleets, how they identified and neutralized threats, and how they coordinated their actions across vast distances. For the first time, human military strategy had to consider not just earthbound conflicts, but interstellar warfare, with technology and threats that seemed almost magical. Amid these preparations, a daring plan began to take shape. While the Deathworlders had neutralized the immediate threat to the alien civilization, humans realized that in the future there could be situations where they themselves would need to act. A small group of elite pilots, engineers, and strategists was assembled to design a first mission, a strike team capable of testing humanity's growing understanding of space combat. The goal was not to match the Deathworlders' power, which was impossible, but to learn through experience, to understand the risks, and to prepare for larger-scale defense strategies in the future. Dr. Morris and her team played a critical role in this mission. They provided intelligence, data analysis, and communication coordination, acting as a bridge between human planning and the information they had gleaned from observing the Deathworlders. Every step of the mission was carefully calculated. Even small errors could result in catastrophic failure. The stakes were high, and the pressure on everyone involved was immense. But this challenge also ignited a sense of excitement and purpose unlike anything humanity had experienced before. For the first time, they were not just observers, they were active participants, taking their first real steps into the vast and dangerous universe. As the mission was launched, humans faced the reality of risk. The strike team navigated through space, testing newly designed ships and weapons. While attempting to weaken a simulated hostile force, engineers monitored the performance of their technology. Pilots executed maneuvers they had never tried before, and strategists coordinated attacks with precision and caution. The tension was palpable. Every decision could mean success or failure, survival or disaster. And yet, there was a sense of determination, a belief that humans were capable of more than they had ever imagined. During the mission, human participants encountered unexpected challenges. Space was unforgiving, and even minor miscalculations could have disastrous consequences. Systems failed, energy levels dropped unexpectedly, and navigation errors tested the team's problem-solving skills. But each obstacle was met with creativity, courage, and resilience. Humans began to understand the importance of teamwork, intelligence, and adaptability in ways that extended far beyond the scope of their previous experience. The mission was not just about attacking a target, it was about learning, evolving, and proving that humanity could rise to the challenges of the universe back on Earth. Dr. Morris and the observatory team monitored every detail. They analyzed outcomes, measured efficiency, and compared human actions to the Deathworlders' methods. The contrast was stark. Humans were slower, less precise, and far more vulnerable. But they also noticed something important: humans had innovation, creativity, and determination. While the Deathworlders relied on raw power and efficiency, humans had the ability to adapt, improvise, and learn in real time. It became clear that humanity's greatest strength lay not in technology alone, but in intelligence, collaboration, and courage. The mission, though risky, succeeded in small but meaningful ways. The strike team managed to disable simulated enemy assets, test new weapons, and gather invaluable data on fleet coordination and energy management. Every success, no matter how minor, was celebrated as a step forward. Casualties were minimal, but the lessons were immense. Humans had proven to themselves that they could operate in dangerous, unknown environments, and that preparation, intelligence, and courage could make a difference even against overwhelming odds. The experience had a profound effect on the human mindset. People around the world began to realize that space was not a distant frontier, it was a domain where life and survival depended on knowledge, readiness, and action. Governments invested more heavily in research, defense, and training. Educational programs focused on science, engineering, and strategy were prioritized. Humanity's perspective shifted from one of curiosity and exploration to one of responsibility and preparedness. They were no longer just dreamers looking at the stars, they were participants in a universe filled with challenges, opportunities, and dangers. Dr. Morris reflected on the broader implications. The Deathworlders had shown that power alone could protect civilizations, but humans had learned that intelligence and adaptability could also make a difference. Technology, while important, was only part of the solution. Strategy, creativity, and courage were equally vital. Humanity was still small and fragile on a cosmic scale, but they had begun to take their first steps toward becoming capable participants in the broader universe. Every action, every decision, and every experiment contributed to the foundation of a new era of human understanding and preparedness. As the mission concluded, and the strike team returned safely, the sense of accomplishment was tangible. Humans had faced danger in a controlled environment, learned from it, and proven that they could rise to challenges even beyond their previous imagination. Dr. Morris documented every detail meticulously, knowing that these records would guide future generations in the ongoing effort to prepare for cosmic threats. Humanity had demonstrated courage, creativity, and determination, and for the first time, they truly understood the meaning of being responsible participants in a universe full of unknown dangers. The lessons of this phase were clear and unforgettable. Humans had learned that survival depended on preparation, intelligence, and courage. They had seen the power of the Deathworlders and realized their own limitations, but they had also discovered their potential. By working together, innovating, and learning from experience, humans could take meaningful action in the face of unimaginable threats. And perhaps most importantly, they had begun to understand that the universe was not only a place of danger, but also a place of opportunity, growth, and discovery. As the observatory fell quiet once more, Dr. Morris looked at the stars, reflecting on humanity's journey. They had moved from passive observers to active participants. They had tested their courage, intelligence, and resilience. And though the path ahead was uncertain and filled with challenges, humans now had a foundation upon which to build, a knowledge base that could guide them in a universe where every decision mattered. For Dr. Morris and her team, and for humanity as a whole, this phase marked the beginning of a new era, a time when humans truly began to take their place in the cosmos, ready to face whatever challenges might come next. After the daring missions and the lessons learned from observing the Deathworlders, humanity found itself standing at the threshold of a new era. For the first time, people everywhere, from scientists and engineers to military strategists and ordinary citizens, realized that the universe was not just a backdrop for imagination and curiosity. It was real, active, and full of forces far beyond human understanding. The events they had witnessed, starting with the SOS from the alien civilization and culminating in humanity's own small strike efforts, had fundamentally changed the way they saw themselves. Humans were no longer just observers of the cosmos. They were participants in a vast, interconnected universe, and their choices, actions, and intelligence mattered more than ever than the observatories and research centers across the globe. Scientists like Dr. Alina Morriskins worked tirelessly to document and analyze every piece of information gathered from the alien SOS, the Deathworlders' intervention, and humanity's initial response. Every pulse of energy, every strategic movement of fleets, every technological pattern was studied with the hope of understanding not only how the Deathworlders achieved their results but also what humans could learn from them. The knowledge gained was overwhelming, both in scale and in potential. It was clear that humanity had been given a glimpse into the rules of the universe. Rules that were unforgiving, but also filled with possibilities for those who were willing to learn. As these studies progressed, governments around the world began to take notice. Funding for space exploration and defense programs increased dramatically. Projects that had once been considered ambitious or even science fiction suddenly became top priorities. Engineers worked on designing new spacecraft capable of longer journeys, more precise maneuvers, and advanced defensive capabilities. Military strategists began creating simulations that incorporated interstellar logistics, energy weapons, and fleet coordination. Humanity had learned that survival depended not just on individual technology but on coordination, preparation, and intelligence. Every lesson from the Deathworlders' intervention became a building block for the future. The aliens who had sent the SOS also played an important role in this phase. Now safe and recovering from the previous threat, they began communicating more openly with humanity, sharing information about their technology, culture, and experiences. For humans, this was unprecedented. They were not only learning about a distant civilization, they were beginning to understand that cooperation across worlds was possible, that knowledge and strategy could be shared, and that alliances could form even across unimaginable distances. Dr. Morris and her team worked as intermediaries, ensuring that critical information was translated, analyzed, and used to strengthen humanity's growing understanding of space and survival. With every new piece of knowledge, humanity's confidence began to grow. It was not hubris, but a cautious understanding that preparation, intelligence, and courage could make a real difference. Small strike missions, simulations, and technological experiments showed that humans could operate effectively in challenging environments, even without the overwhelming power of the Deathworlders. These efforts were not about matching them, that was impossible, but about learning to think strategically, act decisively, and use available resources to maximum effect. Humanity had begun to grasp the principle that intelligence, planning, and adaptability could compensate for the lack of sheer power. One of the most important developments in this phase was the recognition that humans had to change not just their technology but their mindset. For centuries, people had imagined space as a distant frontier, a place to explore or dream about. Now, it was clear that space was a domain where danger and opportunity coexisted, and where preparation and knowledge could mean the difference between survival and extinction. Educational programs were updated to emphasize science, strategy, and problems. Young people were inspired by the events they had observed, dreaming not just of exploration but of becoming capable defenders and thinkers who could contribute to humanity's survival in a vast and unpredictable universe. Dr. Morris reflected on how far humanity had come. A few months ago, the observatory had been a quiet place, dedicated to observation and study. Now, it had become a hub of communication, coordination, and strategic planning. Humans had faced the reality of their limitations and chosen to act anyway. They had learned from the Deathworlders, adapted their knowledge, and demonstrated courage, creativity, and resilience. The journey had been difficult, and the challenges were far from over. But humanity had taken its first real steps toward becoming a capable force in the universe. The alien civilization, now stable and thriving, expressed deep gratitude to humans. They recognized that humanity's efforts, while small compared to the Deathworlders, had shown potential. By coordinating, analyzing, and learning, humans had proven that they could understand threats, strategize effectively, and even contribute meaningfully to cosmic events. This recognition was more than symbolic. It demonstrated that in the universe, intelligence and adaptability were as valuable as raw power. Humans began to see themselves not just as learners but as potential partners in a network of interstellar cooperation. One of the most significant outcomes of this phase was the shift in global perspective. Humanity no longer saw itself as isolated on Earth, looking up at the stars with curiosity alone. People understood that the universe was alive with intelligence, threats, and possibilities. Governments, institutions, and individuals began to think in terms of long-term survival, interstellar strategy, and alliances. Space programs were no longer just about exploration, they were about preparation, defense, and understanding the larger universe. Humanity had awakened to a new responsibility, to act wisely, to learn continuously, and to develop the skills and knowledge necessary to thrive in a cosmos filled with both danger and opportunity. This awareness also inspired innovation and creativity. Scientists and engineers worked on technologies that once seemed impossible: advanced propulsion systems, energy shielding, rapid response communication networks, and strategic simulation platforms capable of modeling interstellar conflicts. Every breakthrough was informed by the lessons learned from observing the Deathworlders, studying alien strategies, and testing human abilities in simulations and small missions. Humanity was learning not just to survive, but to adapt, improve, and become more capable with each passing day. Despite all the progress, there was also a sense of humility. Humans understood that their power was limited, that the universe was vast and often unforgiving, and that challenges far greater than anything they had faced could emerge at any moment. But this humility was coupled with determination. People recognized that knowledge, courage, and collaboration could overcome fear and limitation. Humanity had learned to balance ambition with caution, power with strategy, and creativity with discipline. In doing so, they laid the foundation for a future where survival and progress were possible, even in the face of the unknown. The narrative of humanity itself began to change. Individuals were inspired by the events to pursue careers in science, engineering, strategy, and communication. Young people dreamed not just of adventure but of contributing to a collective effort to understand and protect their world. Nations and organizations began cooperating more closely, sharing knowledge and resources in ways that had never been seen before. The universe, once a distant and abstract concept, had become immediate, urgent, and filled with responsibility. Humanity had begun to see itself as a player in a much larger story, a story of survival, knowledge, and potential. Dr. Morris often reflected on the personal and emotional impact of these events. She had witnessed fear, determination, and inspiration all in the span of a few months. The journey from observing an alien SOS to participating in humanity's first strategic missions had been transformative. Humans had learned lessons not only about technology and strategy but about themselves, about courage, adaptability, and the importance of working together. These lessons would resonate for generations, shaping how humanity approached challenges both on Earth and in the universe beyond. Humanity had reached a turning point. The alien civilization had been saved. The Deathworlders had demonstrated the scale of power in the universe, and humans had begun to understand their own potential. They were no longer passive observers. They had acted, learned, and adapted. The missions, simulations, and analyses had shown that even with limited power, humans could make a difference through intelligence, strategy, and courage. The future, while uncertain, was no longer something to fear. It was something to shape, to explore, and to prepare for. Humanity had learned that the universe was dangerous but not insurmountable. By observing, learning, and taking action, humans had taken their first real steps toward becoming capable participants in the cosmos. Dr. Maurice and her colleagues knew that this was only the beginning, that countless challenges awaited, and that the lessons learned now would be vital in the years to come. But for the first time, humans understood that they had agency, that they could make a difference, and that the universe was a place where courage, knowledge, and collaboration could change the course of events. As night fell over Earth, the observatory remained a place of quiet activity. Scientists continued to analyze, strategists continued to plan, and humans everywhere began to dream bigger than they ever had before. The SOS from a distant civilization had set off a chain of events that transformed humanity's understanding of the universe, their own abilities, and their responsibilities. The Deathworlders had shown what was possible. The aliens had shown what was at stake, and humans had begun to learn how to rise to the challenge. The universe was vast, dangerous, and full of possibilities, and humanity had finally taken its first steps into a future where they were no longer passive observers, but active participants in the grand story of existence.